Hello, my fellow Westorians. It is Monday, it is 7, it is time to dig into episode 5, The Bells. So, Sean, I think I have this is normally the kind of thing we do in our predictions episode, but, I have this feeling, this very strong feeling that episode 6 is going to begin with a brief flashback where it's revealed that all that time, Dany was on top of her dragon going, "Stop! Drogon, stop! Don't do that! What are you doing?"
No, up!
Yeah, up!
Anti-Dracarys,
Yeah. Anti-Dracarys. Dracarest, not Dracarys. Dracar, stop, dang it. Yeah, so it's oddly fitting that peak Game of Thrones, this climactic episode, is simultaneously nailing it and failing it all at the same time.
Yeah.
That's kind of how they do. It's something we've gotten used to, I think. In a way that some people were irritated or annoyed with a lot of parts of this episode. I had my criticisms as well. But to me, it was just kind of just the ultimate, like the dialed up to 11 version of what they've been doing all along. They rush past a lot of character points. They kind of occasionally fumble character arcs. It's going to matter more when it's at the end in these peak moments. But they also get a lot right. And we're going to, as we do, we're going to cover both sides of that.
I thought this was more of a filler episode. I don't think there's that much to that. I'm surprised we're even doing a coverage of this one.
Well, actually, we didn't really want to talk about this Battle of King's Landing. I wanted to talk about a far more important battle, the Battle of Schrute Farms.
Oh.
That's in reference to all your Office references last week. I had to wear an Office shirt this week.
I hope I wasn't limited to just last week for my Office.
And I see you have a nice Clegane Bowl shirt on. Yes. Well,
I was so excited when I saw this shirt. A little less excited about the reality of it.
Well,
I got this like years ago.
Right on, yeah. It was built up for a long time. The showrunners themselves said it was one of those things that sometimes you don't want to cave to fan expectations, but we wanted it too.
Yeah.
So many are, like I said, most major character deaths. I mean, even if this episode was perfect, which obviously it wasn't, but even if it had been painful to say goodbye to seven major characters, six of those seven since season 1, and most of them since episode 1. Gregor is not in episode 1, but Sandor is, Jaime is, Cersei is, and obviously Varys is. No, Varys isn't in the first episode. I think he's not until about episode 2. But anyway, he's close. And then Qyburn comes along around season 3.
They're all season 1, if not episode 1.
Yeah, except for Qyburn, yeah.
But yeah.
And of course, the actor that plays the mountain changes a couple times. But hey, what are you going to do? So that's just
He might be the most magical character.
Stabbed right through the eyes.
Bring it on, Arya. Yeah,
right.
You think you can change your face?
Yeah, his face.
The mountain's been a faceless man all along. Bran is the mountain.
Oh my God.
I can't believe we never went down this path before.
God. It's all coming to a head, an ugly head. And many are calling some of the treatments of these characters character assassinations. And whoa, what a fate to have there, to be killed and assassinated. Damn, that's rough. So that's also a fate for the mountain. He was killed, and assassinated. His character wasn't assassinated. There's not a lot of depth to that character in the first place. Yeah. It's like, they just the mountain got a raw deal. It ruined that guy. He was not a fearsome automaton like he should have been.
I thought he'd be more loyal to his wise old father,
Qyburn. That was the most surprising of all the. Not that he died, of course. Qyburn dying was not surprising, but it was just like,
happened in that moment.
Yeah, just so quickly. It was like, whoa, damn, jeez, okay. But and it's interesting to consider the idea of your creation kind of coming back on you like that. He was playing with fire, to use the wrong metaphor there because it applies to too many other things. Well, anyway, let's start. Speaking of things on fire, the complaints and criticism about the writing and characterization. Sometimes I think, whether it's accurate or not, we can go too far with it, even when we're right, because we forget about the cast and crew and how hard they work. And so I want to start off with some positivity on that side, and just watching the behind the episode and making the game, all that. It's really amazing what they did. I'm sorry?
The game revealed.
The game revealed, yes. Making the game is something else. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, it would be a pretty good title for it, but but it's wrong. Speaking of people on fire, they had 22 people on fire. And you know, you have actors saying things like off the scale, really, in every way, and behind these veterans of set design and production saying just like gushing and talking about these things they've never done before and probably never will again. And just cleverness in these things. There's a lot of ingenuity and creativity that went into this. Like one of the guys apparently came up with this idea to design. They designed the exploding front gates. They built the destruction under it, and then built over that to make it whole. And most of the set design team didn't know that the destroyed part was hiding under it. So it's really clever. Like you just like, it's hard. Like that's really cool. You know, like no two ways about it. There's no writing to complain about. There's no character assassination when you're just thinking about the amazingness of this production. And you know, they moved it from most of King's Landing was filmed throughout all the years, or all of it really was filmed in Dubrovnik, and it moved to Belfast for this because, well, they can't just blow up Dubrovnik, right? They were actually setting things on fire and blowing things up, and like they can't do that they can't just like, can we borrow this street for 2 months and set it on fire
and blow it up,
and blow it up and do
borrow, we'll give it back.
So there was this meme going
How much
around.
is the deposit?
Yeah. So there's this meme going around on social media how King's Landing looks so different from the outside. I'm like, come on, give them a break. I mean, really, that's the kind of production complaints that I'm just like, come on, guys, like give them a break. But there's plenty of other things that we should not give them a break on, so we'll talk about that too. Some other quick notes about the production. There's a scene where they're just showing all these extras having to do all this work in the heat and everything, and then in between sets, there's, you know, they're very, very, very British about a lot of this, the way they express it. It's like, do you want an ice lolly? You know, like, no thanks. And the guy talking about so many people on fire, he's like, 22 people on fire. It's really quite disconcerting, or something like that. Something very, what did he say?
Quite distressing at times.
Quite distressing at times.
At
like,
times.
It's like people on fire. It's just quite distressing, really. So that I highly recommend watching the what's it called again? The Game Revealed.
Yes.
Yeah, I remembered that time at the last second. And then my final note about this is that Amelia, really amazing watching Amelia, who's we commented on. You know, you've always thought she was a solid actress. I thought she was okay. That's gotten a lot better. Really amazing here, because that scene where she's looking all around King's Landing and right before the bells go off, it's total green screen.
She's not looking at anything.
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
There's literally just green screen, and she's on like the mechanical bull thing, basically, that serves as the dragon, you know? So it's really just no cues, nothing to focus on, nothing to work with, just her own mind. So that's very impressive.
Yeah, of all the complaints, I don't think anyone was like, I didn't believe Danny's acting. I don't think that. I mean, maybe someone out there, I don't know. But
some people might. I mean, people were asking they should have had more. They wanted more of her acting. They wanted to show more of that to sell the change or whatever. But we'll get into that more in a minute. That's a huge topic. Last thing I want to throw over to you here is that they compared some of it to the Dresden firebombing, like the filming and what they were going for, and that's, you know.
I was thinking about that exact thing.
You were
about that exact thing. I was also. I've already mentioned multiple times how you can compare these dragons to atomic bombs.
Mm-hmm.
There was even a little conversation on Twitter about the idea of I for sure, and I feel like most people, when you watch this, you have these concerns about the innocence and the nature of what happens in war, and on some level the show and the characters in the show also express that. Tyrion and Varys specifically, it's been a big part here. But in reality, for most of the history of war, that hasn't been much of a concern, at least based on the results that we've seen. Maybe behind the scenes, there are people trying to slow it down. But one reason for that difference in modern times, they didn't have nuclear weapons back then. It was really hard. Even an evil, despotic dictator with a massive army, it was still hard to kill 1 million people in one day.
Yeah.
You know, and so if you were to introduce nuclear bombs or dragons to this medieval sort of scenario, you can imagine people might reevaluate the dangers of war, or how we should handle it, or who should be in charge and things like that. And I was specifically thinking about the idea, and you know, it's maybe a little bit controversial. If you dig a little deeper, you might be surprised at some stuff you find. You probably didn't really need to set those bombs off in Japan after World War II. They were beaten. We had destroyed their supply lines. We destroyed their navy. Yeah. It was really more this political statement to the Russians.
And it's and that's a big thing, and that's in play here. And that's kind of what like Danny's thinking. Whether it's flawed or not is a whole nother matter. And her state of mind is obviously a big part of it. But she thinks she needs fear. She thinks she needs to make the statement, right or wrong, correct or not. that's what's in her head, at least. And it does have, like you said, there's a massive historical precedent for that type of military thinking.
Yeah. And there were advisors to the president that were trying to tell him, look, we don't need to drop these bombs. There were some advisors saying, yeah, hell, there was warmongers that wanted to do it. And there were other people saying, look, we don't really need to. And how truly informed he was, how much he's responsible, I don't know. But, I don't think he was insane. But although maybe he was thinking about what he did. Maybe he wasn't insane, but that was an insane thing to do. Dresden was maybe earlier in the war. This would be a complicated historical thing to go over, but Clear was thinking about it the whole time. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure people out there that know more about World War II than me are probably thinking about it also.
Well, I believe another one that was mentioned on Twitter, I think it was by Brendan Beefish, mentioned the My Lai massacre, where American GIs turned on just slaughtered civilians.
Yeah.
And it just shows there's that concept of the bloodlust, where it's a really hard concept to understand. It's a very dark thing about humanity, but it's real.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when we were watching the episode, I was watching it with Sean, and he's muttering to himself. I can't believe the soldiers are doing what they're doing. And I'm like, that's what has happened. That has what happened historically. And Sean's like, yeah, he's like, mentions Vietnam right there. And he's like trying to come to terms with the fact that we're seeing Stark soldiers doing these things and whatnot.
Even in more modern times, in Vietnam, they definitely
wasn't that long
atrocious war crimes. Even in modern times, in the 10 years, it hasn't been quite as widespread open rape and pillage, but there still have been individual soldiers just murdering prisoners and raping women and so on.
Yeah, it still happens. Yeah,
so I guess I have to accept maybe in this time period when you have like a culture of Dothraki literally built on war and slavery, well, I guess they're going to do that. And there's all kinds of desire for revenge. And even as Stark soldiers, again, it's another thing that maybe I can understand it or see it, but I wish we would get more of it. Like if we had seen Stark soldiers, if there had been captains and sergeants from the Unsullied and from the Northern armies that we had development. We had seen them training. We had seen them advising Grey Worm. We had seen their brothers falling in the field. And now here they are. We maybe would understand this lust for revenge a little bit better than just, people are evil.
And it's interesting too, because they're putting so much of that emphasis on Dany, which is part of the portrayal that's very flawed here, is that all these things are known. It's known that soldiers will pillage and murder and rape. Like this concept has been raised before in Game of Thrones even. And no one really talked about that when they were talking about, all things that can go wrong with the city. They were all focused on Daenerys doing this, and not any of the soldiers could be doing this. If they're not careful, what could happen did happen. And they weren't. They didn't even bring that up. It just happened. They're like, oh my God, soldiers are going around raping and pillaging. And Jon shouldn't have been surprised by that. Jon's naivete is passed over as honor a lot of times, but at some points it's like, dude, this, and that's a big theme here. Like that's something that portrayal, I think, is an issue that I've talked to some people about and have learned more about it and gotten some good perspective on it, but we'll get into that more detail in a bit. A couple quick announcements, and then we'll break into this process with a fun segue that I've come up with here. So I want to remind everybody that our Patreon is rolling along nicely. We've gotten a great response this season. We really appreciate that. I know you have a lot of choices out there and limited time to go through so many different Game of Thrones reviews. So we appreciate that you're sticking with us after all this. And after the season's over, we're going to keep it going, of course. We'll have some wrap-up stuff. We'll have some show-to-book topics, some things because we learned so much about the end game here. Shay and I are preparing this Azor Ahai, many-faced Azor Ahai topic, and we've got other things, too, kicking around that are going to be really interesting. And there's just, because these episodes are so long, we're trying to cover so much, and some things are getting lost in the shuffle. So it's definitely going to be some thinking back over some topics that need more depth and are going to be a lot of fun to deal with. And then, of course, in the future, we'll have the prequel shows and more Fire and Blood to talk about. And, it just goes to show that even when we don't love the episode, even when there's a lot to criticize, it gives us so much to talk about, even when, like this episode could be horrible, really horrible. You could think it was really horrible. And this Dresden firebombing stuff is a really relevant topic that you just talked about. We don't need to rehash it, but it's just a good example of, it leads us to interesting topics, even if the original topic isn't the best. But like I said, too, there's so much to like, even amongst the things that we can criticize here. There's a new feature on YouTube here that we learned about literally 5 minutes before we went live today, called Super Stickers. It's sort of related to Super Chat, I guess. It seems like it's sort of the kind of functionality you get on Twitch. That YouTube is sort of getting into that market a bit. So I don't know what to tell you all about it. You can play with it and tell us what you think
Yeah,
if you
I feel
want
like
to.
our viewers will probably be more likely to want to use a super chat to actually communicate a message.
I agree with
but,
you.
You know, sometimes people don't put any message, so maybe now you want to put a little cute sticker. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so we'll see. We'll as we learn more about that, we'll let y'all know. It may not even be something worth using, but you know, it's worth checking out because maybe it is, and we'll give it a shot. So let's get right to it. Those are the only announcements I had. Except to mention that as far as Patreon goes, don't forget that we are raising the level for getting the bonus episodes. The bonus episodes will be $5 per month minimum, but if you sign up before the end of the season, you get grandfathered in at any lower price as far down as $1 a month. So get in now before it goes up. So let's talk about analysis versus anger. I think that's something I brought up at the beginning, but I want to get more deep into it now. And I want to use myself as an example. Of the two of us, I'm a lot more likely to get heated. I don't believe in astrology, but it doesn't help disprove astrology when my personality matches exactly what astrology says I'm supposed to be. Like thoughtful, whatever, you know, I think a lot, but I also get heated, and which is because I'm on the cusp of the Sagittarius, which is, I'm like right at the beginning of the Sagittarius. That's what they say. Earlier in the beginning, you're supposed to be more fiery. So, well, I do identify with that.
I thought you were going to say you get really angry at astrology.
Also, I'm, the Sagittarius is an archer, is a centaur archer, and, you know, that's why I always keep the camera. Yeah, you don't know what's actually going on down here. So
if we get 10,000 viewers, we'll let you see Aziz's legs.
And soon after, I'll go to jail.
They've seen your legs many a time.
Those are my fake legs. Those are my faux legs.
Your fegs.
My fegs. So yeah, using myself as an example, I know that, you know, I have a fairly analytical mind, but I've ceased to be nearly as analytical when I'm angry. Those things don't mix very well. And not that anger is a bad thing. It can be bad. It can drive you to make mistakes, but it's real, and it's something we all have to deal with. And it's helpful to deal with it helpfully, you know what I mean? Or healthfully. Healthy to deal with it helpfully? I don't know. Anyway, I think you get the gist of that. The point is, when we react to these episodes, it can be difficult to, you know, we miss nuance sometimes if we're just fuming at some of the things that we really don't like. I mean, there's nothing wrong with fuming. I'm not saying don't fume, but we can also be honest with ourselves about what that does to our ability to analyze, which is, it's not good. It doesn't help. And you can still be analytical when angry. It's not like it's not black and white. And you can be, you know, it goes both ways.
So I have a couple comments.
Yeah.
Like, one of my thoughts is that almost every bit of information I take in, I have like an initial reaction.
Yeah.
Right. But then I almost immediately look at another side of it. And so even as you say, like, you know, getting angry doesn't help. Like, well, sometimes it does. And like, as a default, I want to agree with you, but
yeah, none of these things are absolutes.
Right.
That's always a caveat.
Like,
you're right.
When you're angry, it's not binary, okay? It's not like you're either angry or analytical.
Yeah.
You can be both, and one might get in the way of the other or preclude the other, and take over the other. I'm not quite sure how I want to say that, but but you shouldn't ignore emotions. You know, you can go through all this analytical process. You can, like, someone in like a bad relationship, Jamie, or you know, maybe people out there, you can write this. You go through all these reasons. They did this, they did that. It cost this much. I lost this thing. I had to give up, blah, blah. But in the end, I still love them. You know, analytics can't just stop emotions, and emotions are there for a reason. They're meaningful, and sometimes should or could dictate our actions as much as analysis.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to be able to separate them and consider both sides, and sometimes they can cloud each other. But I you know, as I was watching, for example, in this episode, I was like, oh,
that is what I was getting
felt
at.
emotions,
Yeah.
you know, and I didn't quite feel anger, but I definitely felt emotions. But those emotions like spun me into analysis. I just started thinking about, well, what does this mean? How is this slice of people going to think about it? How should I feel about this? How do I count for the emotions I'm having?
It does make your head spin. And I think a lot of different people we talked to said, and this isn't just for this episode, but maybe more often in this episode, but for a lot of episodes, people wake up feeling differently about the episode than they did when they saw it, and just taking a night to sleep on it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think I definitely have gotten that as well, and that's true for me. But honestly, I made my peace with a lot of the changes that they've made. 4 or 5 years ago, or whatever it would have been, season 4 or so. And the things that I'm unhappy with now are the ramifications of the changes that they've made and the way the ripple effect. So like, I can't find myself getting worked up about it because I just had to, accept it a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so like, but still in this episode, I find myself getting a little stressed at the idea of like all the distress that people in the fandom will feel, like Sean was talking about. I feel that emotionally. But myself personally, I've kind of disconnected from that.
Okay.
Thankfully, because it was I was really upset. You got people will remember who listened to our show back in season 4 and 5 when like first with Dorne stuff happened and the Crasters keep mutiny and then they cut out young Griff and then they cut
Stoneheart
just
and all other stuff,
cut out Stoneheart and like just tons of things were happening episode after episode, and then Jaime and Cersei. There was just a million things in those seasons that I had to step back.
Yeah.
I'll say in that time period, having not read the books, a lot of those didn't bother me. I don't know who Stoneheart or
there was no expectation for you to miss out on.
However, I was still very frustrated with the whole Dorne sequence and the sense. Even without book expectations, like what is happening? This stuff doesn't make sense. Where are they going with this? And at that time, it was like 1 out of 8 storylines were baffling and frustrating me, but I was still overall accepting it.
Yeah.
I felt like season 6 was similar with Arya's whole story. I'm like, what's this stuff is now frustrating me, but overall it's still good. I feel like the percentage of things that are like frustrating me and baffling is growing, but I still overall like it, appreciate it. I'm invested. I care about what happens. Even if it like the scales tip and more than half the things, the scales tip in the last half of the last season, like I'm still gonna finish this out. There's still so much of it that I am invested in and care about, and I want to appreciate the effort that's gone into it, and a lot of it too. Like I said, almost every thought I have, I try to see another way to come at it.
Yeah, and that can change your perspective when you sometimes walk down that trail and find yourself in a new place.
And I'll say that's
why I wanted to bring this up in the first place, because this really applies to Dany's state of mind. We're all like her anger versus now. I thought it was useful for us to talk about this with ourselves, but as a lead-in to the relevance of this episode, because Dany's situation is very much analysis versus anger, and she's forced into a spot that nobody could appreciate. It's unrealistic to ever be in the spot she was in for like anyone living real people.
Even her analysis, when she's attempting to be analytical, is
clouded. It's very clouded.
Like even if she's attempting to stay calm and think logically about how things are going, which we could tell she must have done some amount. She's like, no, it was John, and it wasn't like she was mistaken. No, she knew what he meant. She knew.
Yes, she knew what he meant.
But also, she's not eating. She's not sleeping.
Yes,
so her analysis might go off the rails. Yeah. And
to me, like I really get that. I mean, I don't get so mad that I would kill a bunch of people, but I really do appreciate being hangry. That is a thing for me. I get hangry. And if Dany hasn't been eating or hasn't been sleeping, plus all that other stuff, like that's not a small extra factor. That's pretty significant, especially after flying around all that battle and everything, and with the stress of having all those scorpion bolts shot at you and all this other stuff, and just letting her anger out. It's just so much that we can't comprehend. Now that doesn't mean it was the moment was well set up. That's the thing we really want to get into. So let's take a few set of questions, and then we'll work our way into that.
Can I give one thought, by the way?
Sure.
I was there's problems with this analogy, but it was just a thought that I had. That's something I was kind of wondering about. Of course, I always have like a swirl of thoughts, but like I'm way less unsullied now than I was before. Before, not only had I not read the books, but I wasn't on Twitter or I hadn't gone to cons. I was very removed,
Yeah.
But now I've read at least some of the books, and I do keep up with what's happening on Twitter. I've gone to cons. I kind of have more of a pulse of the community, my fingers on a pulse of what's happening. And so for better or worse, maybe my analysis is better. Maybe it's not quite as unsullied, but a thought that I had is going back to that time period when maybe everyone was a little more unsullied. There weren't as many people on Twitter 8 years ago.
That's true.
Right? Way less people were involved in a community. Con thrones didn't exist at that time,
Yeah.
So I wonder how things would have been on Twitter, or if I were more connected when Ned got his head chopped off, or
Yeah,
when Caitlyn cut that Walter girl's
hardly
neck.
a community then. Yeah.
That Frey girl's, Walter Frey's wife. Like, those are moments when I was like, whoa, I couldn't hardly believe it. I was so disappointed that, I was so shocked that Ned died, or so disappointed that Caitlyn would kill that girl. But step back and I think about it, like, well, Joffrey is a wild card. It started off with Ned chopping someone's head off. Littlefinger said, don't trust him. I guess they built up to that,
Yeah.
And so I can imagine there would have been this backlash or frustration or divisiveness in the community around these events that might have played out on Twitter that I just didn't see, or maybe just didn't happen because the community didn't exist like that. Yeah. So now we're seeing it again. Now the difference is, what if instead of Ned getting his head chopped off, Ned just started chopping everyone else's heads off? They were like, instead of killing our hero, ruining our hero. It's a different. But my point is still that, like, I thought a lot about the shock, or whether or not it's built up, or whether or not it's properly built up, just other moments in the past that might have been emotional or surprising or divisive, just drawing parallels to that. And I haven't fully fleshed that thought out. I think I've told you this might be the least fully fleshed out my thoughts are going into one of our coverage episodes. So much happened here, so much to process. It's toward the end. It's
all right, let's
a difficult episode.
Let's get moving here. We got a lot to cover. First set of questions. Matthew Underwood, just a super chat. Thank you for that. No question. Walker Schwartz, you are all the best. No question. Thank you. Well, thank you, Walker. From Chris Trombley, just showing some love. Can't watch you live. See you Wednesday. All right, we'll talk to you then. Yeah, we have a lot of book to show thoughts on this one, of course. Michael Pearson, I usually listen to the podcast, but today I was finally able to make a live stream and signed up to support you on Patreon. Thanks for all the hard work that goes into these great analysis discussions. Click the like. Thank you very much, Michael. Yes, please click the like button. You'd be surprised how much that helps us spread the word. It means a lot in terms of the YouTube algorithm and all that, so it does matter. From Scott Wortman, a.k.a. Bloody Ben Blackwood, more like the Molten Company, am I right? Yes, that is better than my joke. I had a joke written down that I'm now not going to make because this one's better. So, yeah, good job. Molten. Yeah, that's like exactly what happened to Viserys, too. Yeah, that's a good one. Good one, Scott. From Spank My Tater, nice name there. It wasn't the Valonqar, but King's Landing collapsing in on top of Cersei was poetic, in my opinion. Seen a lot of hate on it. Yeah, I thought so, too. I even said that would be poetic before we were talking out Cersei death scenarios. I was talking about falling or being crushed under the rubble. And by the way, that's we don't like to just hang our hats on single predictions unless that's just where the evidence leads. Usually it's better to present a range of possibilities. You're trying to make predictions. That's how I like to do it. And I think that you're the same way. We like, okay, maybe this is 15% chance. This is a 20% chance. And even if the percentages are way off, that's whatever.
Idea, we're clarifying that this is not 90% likely.
Yeah. We're just trying to get like when we talked about a bunch of different possibilities for how the season would play out. And we did get it right, but we also made several suggestions that weren't right. So, but that's the way it goes when you present a range of options rather than trying to just, it's going to be this one thing. I don't like making predictions that way. So, from Centipede, did you know Varys was the most badass guy in the whole show? Burns to death without so much as a whimper. Mm-hmm. Actually, that is a kind of a segue to another observation, which is that it seems that the dragon flame is getting hotter. And which it's supposed to. Dragons are supposed to get hotter as they get older. Yeah. And there's a shot that Ashay could pull up now. I wasn't sure when I was going to use it, but it's a shot of Arya emerging and seeing this little girl burn to a crisp like Pompeii. It's like the survivor, like the dead people at Pompeii, the volcano that erupted in Rome so long ago. And it's like a perfectly formed piece of ash where you can see the girl's little toy horse and her hand, and it's really pretty horrible.
Which might have been a little call to Shireen, by the way.
Hey, you're right. That's a good point. I didn't think of that. But a little horsey, burned girl, yeah. How can you not, how could I not think of Shireen? Well,
I think it was a stag that she had, but it's still a basic form.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good call for sure. But that's just really like, wow. It just shows the destruction and how hot the dragon fire is. Like that person is dead, and that's horrible, but you probably doesn't suffer when the heat is that intense. That's kind of where I'm at with Varys, that the heat was so intense that he hardly even felt it. But it doesn't make it less horrible. But it does make it a little less horrible. If you don't suffer, that's not nothing. If people don't suffer, that's something. Okay. Next question is from Haringaj. Thanks for everything, guys. Have to listen after the fact, but super excited to hear what you have to say. Cheers. Well, we will hope not to disappoint. From Zombie Jesus. At first, I thought Tyrion was trying to trick Dany when he said, if you hear bells, that means the city has surrendered. In the Battle of the Blackwater, Davos and Mathos have an exchange regarding the bells. Don't mean surrender, but war. The bells are a warning. Did we diverge from previously established bell ringing rules? Or am I missing something? No, I don't think we diverge from it. The bells are normally rung for that sort of situation, but this city was already on high alert. So the bells don't have to mean the same thing every time. It's not like in the middle of a war, the bells are going to ring, or in the middle of a battle, the bells are going to ring. People are going to be like, oh, a battle?
Yeah.
They already know it's a battle. So it's fair to have the bells mean something else in a very different context.
They also at least tried to give us a line of dialogue. It might not all perfectly line up plot-wise, but Tyrion told Jaime, hey, ordered the bells to be wrong.
Yeah.
There could be protocols that we don't know that Tyrion would know. And
that's true. From Jojo Dixon, related question. Did Tyrion's convo with Jaime and him being freed get tipped off to Dany, thereby causing her to believe that when the bells rang, she had been betrayed by everyone? I thought the same thing too, but it doesn't seem that's the case. Behind the episode didn't mention anything like that at all. Though I do think there'll be a reckoning. Jaime said to Tyrion, your queen's going to execute you for this. And he says, well, hopefully I can talk her out of it if I can prevent all this death. Well, he wasn't able to prevent all this death because she just went ahead and did that anyway. And she's probably going to find out that he let Jaime go because she's going to be like, why don't we have Jaime in captivity anymore? And those Unsullied will say, well, Tyrion came to him and then next thing we know, he's gone. So they might hand wave that, but I think that Tyrion should be called to account for that. And that might be ugly. From Ahmed Abdi. Do you think the show could have done with more episodes? I feel that the show pacing is a real problem this season. And from Jeff Gnarly, the long snapper, I was going to ask if you thought that last night's episode should be called Book Reader's Bane. But my wife hasn't read the books and she was annoyed too. So maybe Baffling Battle? Definitely felt to me like this episode most exemplified the extent to which they are rushing through the end of this. Yeah, no, I don't think there's a single person that should argue against it being rushed. I mean, you don't have to feel it's rushed personally, but I don't think you should argue with someone who does feel that way. I feel that way. You seem to feel that way. Shea feels that way.
I'll say in season 4, which might be my favorite season, back then I thought there should be more episodes.
Yeah.
Or at least they could add like a few more minutes to each episode. The whole way I've always thought they should have more material. Definitely feel even more so now.
Yeah.
I do try to be understanding. In my mind, they easily could have, should have had 3 more seasons, Yeah. But also, I realize it's hard to keep this. Filmmaking is a conglomerative effort, and there are a lot of people involved in a lot of areas. Not just the cast, which are also like growing and have other film deals. Some of them have families and kids, but also all the crew, everyone making the costumes, the editors, everyone involved in this has been doing it for 10 years. It's hard to keep this together. It's understandable to me that they do need to wrap it up. They don't just have infinite resources and 100% life loyalty of everyone to make this be perfect.
A good example of that is that the Mountain, for his scenes, Halfthor Julius Bjornsson, I probably didn't quite say that right, but you know who I'm talking about. He had to wake up at midnight to be in makeup for 7 hours to shoot for 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That was his days. I mean, and it's really funny because there's all this, like he's talking about the behind the scenes of him. They're just like a day of throwing Rory McCann into walls. And at one point, Rory stands up and he's like, for a big man, you're very gentle. Thank you. It's like so jarring to see these two guys who are like bitterly hating each other forever. And just
it would be much more distressing if we were set on fire.
You're right, gold chap. So anyway, it reminds us. You're right. It's good to remind ourselves that how much incredibly hard work goes on behind the scenes. And so when Dave and Dan, even I love we talk about the fact that they've rushed this ending and they do seem tired of it in some ways.
And the fact that they could have maybe offered it to a couple new showrunners who've already been working on the show.
I agree.
Yeah.
But you do make a good point. There might be a lot of people who would want to move on. But think about how many people would love to work on Game of Thrones.
HBO wanted it to go longer.
Yeah, HBO's willing to
sure.
funnel all the money into it. And
So, it just a reminder that not just it's that we can't be certain. Not that we know for sure it could have been longer or that they could have easily done more. But it probably could have, but at the same time, we don't have a lot of certainty with some of these behind the scene things.
Another thought, like a general thought that I have, for better or worse, is that a lot of this episode or a lot of portions of the show in general might be frustrating or confusing, or, you know, you might not like it, you might not want it, but it happened. That's it. It's there. So we got to deal with it now. You know?
That's right. That's what the show we have. It's like what Ashaya said. Like, you know, she put that to bed. You know, she accepted that season 4/season 5. This is the new material now. This is what they're doing. They move past the books, and this is what we're going to get. It helps with your expectations to have accepted that.
And I still get great, you know, value out of it, seeing things visually. Like when I read The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, and there is, you know, chapters covering destruction via dragons and stuff like that, it will be so visceral and so real in my mind when I'm reading it, whereas it wouldn't have been before.
That's a good point.
I'm quite grateful still for the visual elements of it. Yeah. And there's other things, acting and, you know, whatever. There's a lot of things that I still get out of it, and probably plot lines. Realistically, when I read the books, I'm guaranteed there will be something somewhere where I'm like, I actually liked how they did that in the show a little bit better.
Yeah,
I think there will be.
Cool. From Bill Nitz, thanks for the great content. What's your thoughts on the lack of physical appearance and mannerism changes in Dany from season 6 onward? If they were going this direction as of season 6, it could have been subtle. Yeah, I wonder about that because I've talked about maybe changes in her acting that I haven't really honed in on. Just feel like she's stronger in some ways, but I didn't get at which things, and I don't know what I would say to that. But yeah, it's certainly certain things declining for her, things not going well. It makes sense, and they've definitely people who have paid more attention to her outfits and a lot of these detail that really says a lot about that because they put so much detail into those things. There's a lot to be gleaned from that, but
this might be a big question that will get answered better as we talk more about Dany in general.
True,
and the presentation of her and everything. So,
from Sinfire, Quaithe mentioned a pale mare. Is that Arya's white horse? I don't think so, but it certainly made a lot of us think of it. The quote is, "Soon comes the pale mare, and after her the others, Kraken and Dark Flame, Lion and Griffin, and Sun and the Mummer's Dragon. Trust none of them. Remember the Undying. Beware the perfumed Seneschal." Well, yeah, I think this might be more of the like classic white horse thing, where it's the pale horse is death, but it might even be an inversion of that because this is just she spends the entire episode focused on revenge, and then Sandor talks her out of it, and then she's trying to escape, and then she's trying to help people. And it's an interesting, subtle change that she goes from that, and then she has this horse moment, and that's the end of the episode. So I wonder, it might be symbolic of a change for her, as well as an attitude shift in other ways. We'll have to wait and see. It's hard to say at this point. We'll definitely have more thoughts on that on Saturday on our predictions episode. We need more time to think about that for one thing.
Yeah, I was going to say I was stirred by that moment. I feel it was maybe a little out of place, but I still appreciate that they did it. Something I've pointed out many times is many styles and techniques to filmmaking. And a lot of filmmaking, especially modern filmmaking, is kind of like nonstop in your face. But a lot of more, we'll say, artsy filmmaking, things that aren't like $100 million blockbuster summer hits or whatever, a lot of times I have a lot of still moments and silent moments, the camera just sitting on a character and on an image. And that's kind of what this was, especially in context of the rest of this episode. And those moments, one thing they do is they cause an audience to turn inward. Instead of like being overwhelmed what's happening or thinking about what's about to happen next, you start to think about your own thoughts. You start to turn to, how do I feel about this? What would I do in a situation? What does this represent? Things like that. Yeah. And that's what, for me, was happening with this moment. This horse showed up. It slicing me as like, this is kind of odd. Like a lucky horse. Odd, conveniently right there for Arya. Those thoughts all went through my mind. But
I was definitely like, this is very strange to me, and I can't take this very seriously.
But being so strange forced me to think about it harder. Like, okay, they did this for a reason. This isn't random, So what is the meaning here? Does the horse symbolize something? I started to wonder if maybe she's dead and this is some sort of like vision as she bleeds out,
I really liked, I was just kind of baffled by it at first, other than the symbolism, which I get, but was just kind of cheesy or contrived or whatever to me originally. And then Aziz brought up the idea that maybe a Bran was controlling the horse, and whether that's the case or not, a
white horse covered in blood. It was red and white, so that's what made me think of it.
Weirwoodish.
Yeah, I genuinely want Bran to do something and all that. I don't think, after more thought, I don't think Bran was in the horse, but I want it to be the case, and we'll find out. Maybe
he would have been aware of this scenario.
It might be something we
it's
never
a theory
know.
that fits that we have no proof
real.
of.
And we might never know for sure. It's not like Bran will tell
The-
someone or anything like that.
I will say I am unsure, and we'll probably have deeper thoughts and discuss it more in the predictions episode, but I can't decide in the end there if she's decided just to get out of here and forget about revenge, or like no way to have to do something about Dany. I'm not sure where she is,
You're right. We'll talk about that more on Saturday. And just as a wrap up here, the pale mare refers to disease in the books. So that's another thing that's, they could be borrowing that term, but obviously it's not going to be, I don't think they don't have time for some disease plot to play out in an episode.
Johnny Cash song? Doesn't he have a song, or maybe quote a
White
line
Horse,
from the Bible or something?
That's right. I think we
that.
even have that quote later in our document here. I'll find it later. Another question from Centipede. Do you think Bran was controlling the horse that saved Arya? Well, maybe. Yes. That question's right on point. Yeah. I think there's a good chance. We'll see. But nothing to actually prove it at this point. Mr. Mitchell 954. More episodes/seasons would have equaled more open-ended storylines. They wouldn't have known how to wrap up, even with different showrunners. I'm not sure that's true. They could, with better planning, they might have planned the beginning and end of some of these things, like they did with these sets. They were describing how they were building them. They were designing them to be built, but also as they were designing, they were building them to be destroyed. They're building the destruction as they were building the thing. So that's just, I think part of that is not enough unity in the writer's room, too many different writers, and not, filling things out, seeing things through all the way until they're done. I don't think that, I see your point. It could go that way. If they're not careful, it could spiral out of control. But with more control in the process, it wouldn't. So, I don't know. I could see it going both ways. From Will Moss, a.k.a. the night of the mid-afternoon, probably about 3:30. That is his actual patron name, which made us all laugh out loud. Given the anger that has been building in the fandom, if people saw the Red Wedding in this mood, would they get mad, say ruining development, etc.? That's what Sean was getting into earlier. It's if so many of us had been in the fandom at that point, I don't know. It's hard to say. That was the first episode we did a TV show episode for. Before that, we had done book stuff only for the most part.
Here's another thought. And I know this is hard to imagine there's problems with this, but just for a moment, imagine that the show had been made after the first book. And then they got to the third season before Martin had got there and did the Red Wedding. Would people be like, what? I can't believe this. Martin never would have done it.
It's possible. Yeah.
It's some of this, the showrunners or certain fans or slices of fans might 10 years from now feel vindicated.
You're slicing up fans? Jeez, that's harsh. From Philip Wolf. I've always hated the bells. They ring for horror. A dead king, a city under siege. Varys. A wedding? Tyrion. Exactly. That is season 2, episode 9, apparently. And then we also have Night King episode 3, Siege episode 5, a wedding episode 6. So yeah, maybe, he's saying that since we've had Night King episode 3 and a Siege episode 5, maybe we will have a wedding in the final episode. It's possible. There's a lot of ways it could go. We'll save our thoughts for prediction thoughts for Saturday, as we always do. But thanks for that quote. That's really good. It adds more context to this whole thing.
Can you imagine? Imagine the moments when Tywin just kind of lays down a law, tells Cersei, "You will marry Loras." What if Cersei tells Sansa, "You will marry Tyrion"?
You mean Dany?
Or Dany?
Yeah.
Dany tells Sansa, "You will marry." Yeah.
Rough. Yeah, something like that. That would be
and the dragon rumbling right next to her, and I'm like, okay, I guess I will.
Yeah. Jeez. Do you think from JC, do you think the common folks' treatment of Missandei contributed to Dany's willingness to burn them? Yeah, a little bit. And I think that Dany made, during her build-up to that moment, she referred to how the people of Meereen and Astapor, they kind of just rose for her. But these Westerosi don't love her, and they don't trust her, and she doesn't trust them as much either. I think that's a big part of it.
They don't love and trust her or her people that she has, Missandei and Grey Worm. The people she's close with.
This brings up a couple things, a couple points I want to make here, and kind of on both sides of an argument. One is I wish we'd frickin' seen scenes with Dany confiding in Missandei. I wish we had seen Missandei go to Dany. Are you all right, my Grace? Like, call me Dany. Like, are you okay, Dany? Your children have died, and you're in this unusual circumstance. And she confides, and they bond. And then we cut back to them having another moment of bonding where Dany's like, John's not talking to me, and Missandei's like, I feel like an outsider here. Like the people look at me weird. Really? Yeah. You don't know what it's like because your skin's not brown, but I'm telling you. I wish we could have seen these moments, and it might be more understanding for Dany to want more general revenge from a Sunday, So
that makes sense.
And so many times, so many ways, extending the 3 minutes, but they're already an hour and 23 minutes. Making an hour and 26 would have been the end of the world to give 1 3-minute conversation between Dany and Sunday. They don't have to like retroactively change anything. They don't need a new CGI. They just need to have characters that are already there, have good conversations.
We got like a 3-minute scene of Jaime and Euron fighting in this episode. I feel like they had the time.
Yeah.
We got like 9 minutes of them burning the dead and Jon giving a speech last week.
Yeah. They took time a couple seasons ago to have Tyrion, small talk with Sunday and Greyjoy, like try to tell a joke, try to get them to tell a joke. And I love, some people didn't, but I love that moment. That's telling you, that's the kind of moment I want. And that one was maybe a little bit of comic relief, a little awkward because of the nature of these characters, but it's the same type of moment that I want from Dany and Missandei.
Yeah.
Now, flip side, is I feel like even if there's some amount of blame you can put on the people of King's Landing, right? Especially because we've seen the people of King's Landing be shitty in the past, like towards Cersei, or they cheer Ned Stark's death, or all these other moments where maybe you could it's not fair because every single person in King's Landing wasn't doing that. But let's say they were. Let's say every 7-year-old child was evil and wanted Ned to die. All of them weren't subject to propaganda, and let's say they all were. At this moment, there's who knows how many scores of thousands of people in King's Landing that weren't part of any of that. People were like heading there for protection from winter, and they all got burned too. So it makes it extra frustrating how unjust what Dany did is.
Yeah. Okay, next question from Sir Hype the Dank. I thought about Dany's early years with the horse. When I saw the horse, I thought about the horse she got from Drogo, and more specifically the scene where she ate the horse heart and first won the love of the people. See, that's really good. Those are both really good takes. Dany's early years with her horse, that was a silver horse, not a pale mare, but, it's reminiscent of her horse all the same. And the horse heart thing, that's a really good take. I like that. That's a good thought. From Nathan Hayland, is Bronn's role significant since we didn't see him in episode 5? Kill Tyrion now? No, I think even less likely that he's going to kill Tyrion now because he no longer can collect a reward for Cersei from doing it. So that's the last thing he wants to do is kill Tyrion. However,
also he might not be able to if Dany does it first. That's a real possibility.
And I don't know that Tyrion's going to be able to come through and give Bronn what he asked for because I don't think Dany's going to have that. But we'll see. Maybe have some more thoughts on that after. From Slugmind, who did a thank you super sticker. So I guess that's the first person to use the super sticker format thing there. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
It was quite cute. It was a little animated sticker. It said thank you. So now we know.
Now we know. The episode begins with Varys' plotting, and it's actually this is pretty subtle. He's trying to poison her.
Yeah,
and
I didn't realize it at first. Yeah,
he's trying to poison her. I said it out loud. I was like, he's trying to poison her? And yes, it's almost 100% true, almost definite. He says that to the little girl, says, I think they're watching me. And he's talking about the kitchens and how she won't eat, and how he says the greater the risk, the greater the reward.
Yeah, at first you think the not eat is like, oh, she's not in good shape. And I even for a moment thought, oh, Varys is actually worried about her. Like, oh, no, he's trying to get her to eat poisonous food.
Yep. So it's like, wow. So that escalated quickly. And it's interesting, too, because Varys sort of saved her from poisoning with that letter to Jorah. And when she almost drank the wine from the wine cellar.
He almost,
Wait, I'm missing.
And remember when Jorah saved her from drinking the wine, the poisoned wine?
Oh, that's right.
The letter was from Varys.
That's right. Yes. I did not piece that together either. That's good. Man.
And it goes back to the small council where they were all arguing, where Robert wanted to kill Dany.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, what are we worried about this little girl?
They're saying she's going to kill millions, leave her alive. She's going to kill millions.
Yeah.
Ned was wrong.
Hashtag Ned was wrong.
Robert was right all along. Just kidding. But so that is really interesting, though. So she ceases eating, which accidentally saves her life. And then it doesn't seem like she's been sleeping either. She looks really bedraggled. They have that scene with Tyrion where she's really looking haggard. But despite that, she feels betrayed by Jon and Tyrion because Tyrion did not bring this information to her and told Varys without her permission. That's bad. Yet she forgives him. And she's forgiven him many times.
Yeah.
And she forgives Jon, even though, and he hasn't even given her the final ditching yet, as far as
she
the
might
relationship.
might have forgiven, but she hasn't forgotten.
Definitely. But Varys has clearly gone too far, and she doesn't even know, and they don't even know about the poisoning. I don't even think they realize that. This is just him sending letters. So that's an open question for us to talk about in the predictions episode. We're not going to talk about it now, but the open question is...
How many letters did he get off?
How many letters did he get off, and to who?
Yeah, I think it's possible, we shouldn't get too much in this, but I think it's possible that he didn't get any off. I was just thinking about the idea of, is he going to like write one letter, then go to the Ravens and send it off, and then come back and write one letter and go to, like, even if that's so inefficient and it's more like a draw attention. Makes more sense to write 10 letters and to go send 10 all at once. And if he's on letter number 8 and Grey Worm walks in, I think it's at least possible he didn't get any off.
I'm guessing he spread it around, but you're right, it's possible. So, you know, this is something that would have been nice to play out longer. You know, this whole Varys betrayal and being cut down or burned to death it all happened so quickly.
Yes,
it would have been nice to have that play out.
Would have been spread out over at least 3 episodes in the past, or if we had 3 episodes.
Considering it was rushed, it was okay. Yeah. You know, like if some of the things lose a lot by being rushed, this one was okay for being rushed. You know, it bothered me less that it was rushed, but it did bother me. But you know, we have to get used to that. But there's some serious pathos here too, because Tyrion's arc here is really sad. It's lost in the shuffle a bit. Is that he tries so many things and they just don't work. And at this point, Varys is basically his best friend, and he just had to choose between his queen and his best friend. And he chose his queen, and Varys was probably right. And he's got to deal with the fact that he's like, oh man, Varys was right.
Poor Tyrion lost his best friend.
Yeah,
Dany lost her best friend.
Dany lost a lot more than that. Yeah. But I mean, if we're individual perspectives, and then he sets Jaime free. He's got to face that too, and that didn't work either. So it's like, whoa, so much just not working, and he's got to feel like he's betrayed his friend, and he didn't do his job that he wanted to do, which was save the people of King's Landing. Not that he really, I don't know what he could have done besides letting Varys kill Dany, maybe, but that wouldn't have been a very satisfying way for the show to go either. Just they succeeded in poisoning.
They poisoned
Dany.
her. Like let me think a second. What would have been more frustrating if Tyrion joined with Varys and successfully poisoned Dany versus
or this? Like I think that would have been more. I think this is less frustrating because at least this maybe they can explain it. If Dany hasn't actually committed atrocities yet, that's like, come on, like because there's people who were even up till the last minute weren't sure she was going to do it. And even though we all saw it coming, it was still jarring when it happened. Yeah. It was like, because it was more jarring than we thought it would be. We didn't think it would be quite so targeted. She was aiming for civilians. We thought it would be more collateral.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but I do feel like...
we're pretty much there now.
I feel like they specifically made a point of removing any ability to defend her.
Yeah.
There are multiple things they could have done where you go like, well, I guess, well, maybe, but like, it's like they wanted to make sure that we just couldn't, which is, I think, kind of frustrating. Like,
it is.
Maybe it's important. Maybe, especially when we see how the next episode goes, we'll understand it better. But maybe it's a terrible mistake, and maybe they unnecessarily frustrated a lot of people.
One thing I hope for is showing other people's culpability here. Not that Dany isn't, obviously, because there's nothing you can do to make Dany not guilty of burning all these innocents. Even if her state of mind is interesting to consider and a huge, huge factor. But the naivete of people and like Jon being like just refusing to listen to Varys, sure, Varys is, that's a traitor. But Jon's being portrayed as like this upstanding guy for not entertaining Varys' suggestion here. But Varys was right. I mean, he was a hypocrite about some stuff, and there's flaws with this plot line, but these characters are now faced with the realization that Varys was right, and they killed him.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, by the way, that Tyrion at least entertained what Varys had to say. Had a back and forth discussion, in the end disagreed.
Yeah.
But he understood what's going on. Jon's like, I don't even want to hear it.
Yeah.
And I think it's even if Jon sticks to his guns, I think he should at least be more receptive to these.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Ned. Kind of like Ned.
Too rigid about these things. He puts his own honor and his code of honor above things that he shouldn't. This is a lesson that Qhorin Halfhand taught him that he has not apparently taken to heart. Qhorin was like, honor isn't shit if it saves lives. Like, your personal honor is nothing if it saves lives. He's like, if you go to your grave being, like people think you were a bad dude, but if you actually saved lives, that matters. He's like, the way he puts it in the books is really well. He's like, our honor is coin spent, well spent for the realm. Our sacrificing our honor is like, doesn't matter. And Jon was very concerned with how he was going to be seen after breaking his vows. And that's a little bit of a vanity thing. You could argue that his priorities are very much out of whack. I hope they touch on that because I don't want Dany to just be this all about. Like, it's really annoying that Jon is the one ethical person in the entire battle until Arya starts saving people at the end. And everybody else is either bent on revenge or bent on dying with their lover.
Give Davos some credit.
Well, Davos didn't do anything. I mean, you're right that he was there, but he wasn't giving orders. He was just going along with everything. Like he wasn't unethical. But he wasn't like
weren't
Jon.
in his head either during it.
No, you're right. We weren't in his head.
We weren't in his head during it, and so which I would like to be. Davos is a POV character. He's a major character. He's a good guy, presumably. I would have liked to see Davos's perspective.
We definitely didn't see him charge in with Grey Worm attacking the unarmed Lannister soldiers.
Do that. Yeah, he didn't do that.
But we also didn't see him saving people or whatever. But
yeah. So anyway, so that's.
I would have felt better if I saw Davos saving someone and having to kill someone than Jon.
Like more other people.
That's a scene that bothered me a little bit. I'll go out there and say that. Like Jon taking I like the idea of Jon having to kill a Stark soldier, right?
Yeah.
His own soldier to stop someone. But the idea of like they're really like making it really clear Jon's the good guy. Jon is good. He's saving a woman from being raped even. Like
they've both been Grey for their whole careers. They've both been the focal point of so many people's central plot expectations because they're these two leader figures. To have them both go from Grey to one be black and one be white is very jarring at the last minute. And it wasn't, like we said, I think they set up Dany's not insanity, she's not insane, her break or whatever you want to call it, pretty well logically in terms of the facts laid out, but they didn't nail the moment of her transition. The moment where she breaks, the bells, they failed in that moment, and that's huge because all these stuff we talked about, it's a compelling reason for her to break down. The hunger, the tiredness, the trauma, PTSD, the loss. Those are compelling reasons to descend into madness or a psychotic break or whatever. But in the moment when it happened, but they didn't, that's not enough for her to go kill children, to me.
Yeah, like I'll say on one hand, they definitely didn't not set this up.
Right.
You can't say that. It's
not out of nowhere.
But they also didn't only set this up.
Yeah.
They certainly didn't perfully set
They
this
also
up.
set up that Dany didn't want to kill children.
Right.
And then
exactly. So, and I've even said in the past few weeks that I'm kind of frustrated that it's kind of hard to predict because there's so many different things that they seem to have set up that they don't follow through with. So many things seem to happen kind of out of nowhere. So some of the things, I guess they set them up, but there seems to be enough inconsistency that I understand people feeling like they didn't really set it up. And even if they did, let's say they really did set it up, I don't know if they set it up well enough that some of I wonder if even the break didn't really happen in that moment when the bells were ringing, that she already broke 2 weeks ago or something. But they didn't really show us that. You know? They made an attempt, I should say. They didn't show us at all. It's not binary, right? They did show that she was disheveled. They told us she was eating and sleeping, etc. But I still feel like, once again, if we saw a scene of someone going to her door, knocking, and she's like, leave me alone. We see her alone. We see her crying. We see her pulling her hair out. It could have given us a few moments, which would have been, because I want to give them credit for maybe wanting to surprise us, because I think a lot of people were quite surprised by this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe surprise moment after moment surprise. And so they want to give us that, but I still think it would have been surprising. I still think it would have been surprised even if we had showed her going through a grief process, whether it's because we just chalked it up to a grief process and not her descending into insanity, or even if we thought, wow, she's starting to go crazy, but that crazy, oh my God. It's
just, and even the logic behind it is there. It just isn't necessarily, enough to sell it. It's like, oh, she wants to burn people because that scene with Jon where she's like, oh, I guess it's fear then, because if this country won't love me, the only way I'm going to be able to rule is with fear. She would prefer to rule with love. And I know there's a lot of people irritated with the way they presented that moment between Dany and Jon, the way they explained it behind the episode, but I really don't see it that way. Some people were saying, oh, if Jon had just been willing to sleep with Dany, everything would be fine. Like, that is not what they were saying.
They're saying simple anyway.
And it's not that simple. And B, that's not what they were saying. They were saying that their exact words were, he's unable to return her affections. And that's because of the incest thing. But it goes farther than that. He just can't do it because it's, weird and creepy to him. But there's a pretty significant political outlook from here. Jon is beloved. She points this out. So if he is in a relationship with her, it endorses her. This hero of Westeros is endorsing her in a relationship, but by rejecting her, he's kind of done the opposite.
Yeah.
That's bad. Like, even if some people will be like, oh, she probably dumped him, there's going to be rumors, and they're going to be like, oh, even people who think that will make her the bad guys. Like, oh, she dumped the hero of what? Like, who is she to do that? Like, he's a hero, you know, blah, blah, blah. So there's this, it doesn't look good. Any way you look at it from politically.
Even if he didn't mean to do it, it will happen. And also, probably, he didn't consider it.
Yeah,
it's the type of thing that Sansa would have considered. Sansa, even if Sansa doesn't love whoever she's married up with against, Freudian slip. She still would understand the role she needs to play as a leader, the sacrifices that she has to make. You know?
And I think this is a huge, like, Jon is so annoying that he doesn't think of these things. Like, he's so great in terms of his, like, moral fortitude, but he doesn't think through, like, the outcomes, which would probably change his moral fortitude, because he'd be like, oh, if I didn't realize I was causing this. Like, he was stunned. Like I said, he was stunned at what was happening in this battle. He shouldn't have been completely stunned. He shouldn't have been stunned that soldiers that had bloodlust were raping women. That's not, you know, it's right to be like, oh God, I need to stop this. That's a normal reaction, I suppose. But yeah, his naivete over and over is
to be fair, I was stunned also. I should have known I was stunned.
They just don't point that out enough. They're not like, God, Jon, be smarter, you know?
Yeah, and I obviously, you were stunned, and maybe Jon should have known, but Jon hasn't been part of, like, a conquering, you know, invading force before, but he has been around groups of men who have gotten away with them. Like, you know, thinking of, again, Craster's Keep and the mutiny there. Like, he's seen the darker side of humanity already.
But even there, those would have been like the bad guys, the evil people, right?
Maybe, but they were also
not his allies,
they
not
weren't
Grey
the
Worm.
bad guys. Like, those were people of the Night's Watch. They
had been,
like,
they have been. Yeah.
You know, some of them were bad and whatever, but like, some of them got swept up in it, whatever. I don't want to get too hung up on that, but the point is that Jon has seen some atrocities committed, but not where he's on the same side, like, explicitly. Like,
and also not right in front of his face.
Yeah.
And also not in the wake of, like, he's processing the same thing that they all are. Yeah. Right? He's like, oh my God, Dany, they rang the bells. Oh my God, Grey Worm, they dropped their swords. Like, you know, like, even if he was used to atrocities, this moment is still going to be...
There's no way I can picture any person, anytime, anywhere, not reacting in a stunned manner.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the being stunned. It's the surprise. It's like, oh my God, I'm witnessing this. Of course, it's going to be horrible to witness. But as a guy who's been around war a bit, it shouldn't be a total surprise in that sense. Like, I'm trying to parse surprise from shock. You know what I mean? I wanted to point,
I forgot how this tied in, but I did want to say something earlier about Tyrion. I guess we're talking about how maybe Jon's and Ned's, their honor, while on one hand has value and is respectable, on the other hand has flaws and maybe is self-centered. Tyrion told Jaime, Jaime's like, you might die. You're going to get yourself killed doing this. And Tyrion's like, thousands of innocent lives versus one not so innocent life. You know, like, it seems like if Tyrion and other people have been willing to sacrifice their lives, Jon should be willing to sacrifice his honor. And in the end, Ned sacrificed his honor. So, it's also a little easier for us to sit back and analyze with modern perspectives, watching the episode 3 times, communicating with each other what they should have perfectly done. In the heat of the moment, it makes sense for Jon to screw some stuff up or not think about it in the right way.
So if we get back to this moment, the turning point, I think that, to convince the audience that Dany is capable of burning fleeing children, you need more than what we got, I think. Even though they gave us a lot. It just wasn't some of it wasn't in that moment. That's the key thing.
Call it the breaking point instead of the turning point.
Okay, breaking point. That's a good point. Good point. And but even though we've had clues that she can be a little scary since season 1, like the way she was like cold about Viserys' death, and Viserys is awful. So it's like at the time it was like, no big deal. But there's a lot of little things like that. However, we had an idea. There's something they did that I think would have, if they just did it slightly differently, it would have worked really well. This is the first time I've ever seen the previously on episode. They sometimes give clues to like what they're going to address, but this is the first time where they added something.
Yeah,
and it was really powerful. Sean, you and I both were like, "Whoa, look at this!" And here you should read these because it's really powerful. If they had done this during Dany's breaking point, it would have been awesome. This would have been showed what's going on in her head, but it's not. So we got 8 quotes. I really
disagree with the idea of them doing that during Dany's breaking point, because it's just would totally take me out of the immersion of the moment. Because they're not. If they were all quotes Dany had heard.
Well, what if they
that
were?
might have made it better.
What if they were?
If they were only the
okay.
quotes she had heard, I would be fine with it. I just have to give my own clarification.
They
there.
weren't all quotes she had heard.
I don't think they were. Some of them I
No.
think were people
No,
talking.
yeah, she didn't hear
Aemon.
Aemon.
Targaryen
There's no way
alone in
she
the
heard
world.
the
Yeah.
Aemon one.
Yeah.
So
it's-
to compromise both thoughts is that they could have done this, but a different set of quotes. If
Yeah,
they had done
but
this type of
just-
thing, but with a
yeah.
different set of quotes.
And it couldn't be right at the breaking point, like maybe like a minute before, just during the action sequence.
Yeah, or just
Not,
a sequence of showing her alone in her room,
Yeah.
refusing to answer the door.
Sure.
And maybe they could have scrolled through a different series of lines, but
Anyway, let's hear
but it
the
was
actual
very
quote.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, oh wow, this is the most meaningful the intro has been. Sometimes it is. They definitely give you clues in the episode when Sandor. Well, I guess that was a
But it
cold
wasn't.
open,
But it wasn't added though.
Right,
They,
yeah.
They just
But
like
they-
re-show you key moments.
Yeah.
So
So it's-
yeah, read them out.
he has a better claim to the throne, Varys, and he's like fired off in
And-
like
and-
5 seconds. You hear all these things.
And you miss them probably without subtitles. It really helps. We always watch with subtitles, and this was huge here because we got to know.
Yeah.
Like I would have recognized the voices probably, but
But yeah, it's
But it's
kind
hard
of closing
to.
in on her face. It's the face she's making as Miss Sunday is being killed,
yeah.
and it's closing in on her face, and he has a better claim to the throne. You hear Varys say, "Every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin." Cersei says, "The Mad King gave his enemies the justice he thought they deserved." Barristan says, "Children are not their fathers." Tyrion says, "Be a dragon." Olenna says, "You have a gentle heart." Jorah says, a Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing. Aemon says, and "You don't want to wake the dragon, do you?" Viserys says, and all these things are little pieces of her internal struggle.
Yeah,
Our internal struggle, maybe.
It was really good. Yeah, that was neat. I wish they had, like we said, maybe made it more prominent. But I'm glad we got it. Okay, so let's take a quick mid-roll break. We'll come back with more analysis, more questions, and more bad jokes, most likely.
Also, I have to announce that we've hit over 2,000 viewers.
2,000
Oh my
viewers.
God.
We
Oh.
have.
Does that
right
mean I have to
now,
dance?
We're almost at 2,100. But that's what you guys were talking about.
I thought last week we did both dance. I don't know if that counts. I don't know if you'll let us off the hook
you
for
were
that.
in your
But
seats. I don't know. But Aziz sang. Oh, no.
So we'll do that at the end
The
then.
spotlight just fell onto me.
A reason for y'all to stay tuned through the whole thing or to catch the ending if you are watching this afterwards. So we'll get into that at the end. So we'll need a song. You'll need to pick out a song for us.
wait, I did pick out a
You
song
picked
one
the
week.
song "When I'm Small" by Fantagram. You wanted to do.
Oh,
that.
okay. So we're already set for that. That's cool. So, yeah, let's come back to some of this battle stuff.
Wait,
we have
did you
plenty
have a
more to talk
mid-roll?
about, Danny. Yeah. But
Sorry, okay.
first, I'm going into the mid-roll.
Okay.
And let's give some shout outs to our Queens of Love and Beauty. They are wonderful folks that have gotten shout outs. It's our one patron level where you get to make a shout out for someone else. All the others, you design your own title or have us design the title for you. Erin, Lady of the Long Desert, names Emma of Starfall, the Queen of Love and Beauty, in sight of pods and men. And from the depths of Fleabottom, Lord Ken of House Hammer has declared for Queen Kari, a Fire of the North, who recovered Dark Sister from beyond the wall. Very cool. Also want to remind y'all that you can get two free downloads from audible.com. You can find the link on our website, historyofwesteros.com. And I highly recommend both Fire and Blood and The Thrones Effect, which was the book that Ashay and I contributed to Chapter 2, featuring a lot of other prominent YouTubers in the A Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones community. Why not get it on audio instead of the hardcover, if that's what you prefer? That could be one of your 2 free downloads. And we do the readings for a couple of the chapters, so it's not just our one chapter that our voices appear in. All right, a couple more questions, and then back to some of the battle stuff. Second question here from Lena Allen. It does seem a bit of foreshadowing that Lady Olenna, someone who had already lost everything, told her to be a dragon. Yeah, in retrospect, that line really looms because she's also probably regretting not taking that advice right away because she just lost all these battles and lost all these soldiers and all this other awful stuff happened.
Yeah, I didn't think of it till just now, but if she, some combination, if the advisors hadn't tried so hard to stop her or she had just defied them in the first place, would she have been as destructive?
Yeah,
maybe she would have
maybe
just
not.
gone straight for the Red Keep and not just decimated everything.
Yeah. From Bittersteel, appropriately, a super chat about the Golden Company. He says, for the Golden Company, at least they fought well. Oh, wait. Yeah, they didn't fight at all, did they?
Yeah, they didn't get much of a chance.
That was slightly disappointing that they didn't get into action, but oh well. It's not like the action wasn't really good in this episode, so not complaining about that. From Established. R.I.P. Qyburn. He didn't deserve better, but I'll miss his twisted necromantic ways.
Right? Oh, man, I was...
Shocking death.
Thought for sure that the whole series would end with him writing the story in a book, just like Frodo.
From Bill White. John killed all of them. She just needed to D. See, it is all about cocks. No. Josh Lasagna. 3 moments Dan and Dave said shocked them when George told them. Shireen, Hodor, and something at the end. You think Dany burning King's Landing is the third? Maybe. It could be.
That makes sense. I do remember reading that at one point. Yeah, what is this shock?
The problem is, though, that a lot of people think that the way this is going to go down in the books is going to be a lot different, that it may be a little more accidental, that the targeting will be a lot different, that it will be more collateral. Like, we can't assume that the details will be exactly the same, even if the broad strokes... Like, a lot of people think that she'll be blamed for it. Like, if there's wildfire caches, which we did see a little hints of the wildfire. They gave a nod to that by some just random wildfire explosions that were pretty small.
Relatively small.
Yeah, like they would be huge if it weren't for all the dragon fire everywhere.
Yeah.
By themselves, they would start huge fires if there weren't already fires everywhere. But that could be, that could be it. But my skepticism is that the burning might be a lot more nuanced. But for them to have portrayed it this way, this is maybe how they interpreted it. If George told them this and they did it their own way, well, that would be shocking to them if this is what they heard when he said it. So there's a couple of ways to look at it.
I like to try to put myself, it's kind of a thought experiment of putting yourself into the idea of how George would tell them bullet points and try to think about how certain things could be, just drilled down into a bullet point. So, Dany burns King's Landing and is killed or dies afterwards,
or is blamed for
whatever, however you want to bring that down to just a sentence or two. And how they have to fill in the gaps. Yeah. Maybe it's more like a paragraph that they got, but I don't think that it's a very thorough outline.
Agree.
So maybe certain bullet points are like Arya, goes back towards a path of redemption instead of continuing on a path for revenge. Mm-hmm. Maybe something like that. Like they know that they don't know how to get there or what the steps are, but they know that bullet point. And so I challenge everyone to, when thinking about these things, try to think about what the bullet point is that they could have gotten.
Yeah.
I've thought a lot about that.
That's exactly where I was at with Qyburn. That's a very simple moment of Qyburn being killed by the mountain. Like, maybe that's what George said. Qyburn is killed by his own creation. There's a lot of ways for that to be far more interesting than what happened, which it wasn't uninteresting. It was a fitting way for it to go, but it wasn't exactly, like, nuanced. But, it's a perfect example of something that could be a lot more... could be a lot more to it. From Brian Crane, anyone else turned off by the exploding buildings from Dragonfire? What's King's Landing made of? I thought stone would only melt from Dragonfire. Well, honestly, the first time they did that, I was turned off, but that was done many seasons ago, and they've just kept doing it. So it's, I think the time to be annoyed by that was a while ago, and because it's just a pattern they've continued. We have to expect they're going to keep doing that. However, it seemed like that was turned up another notch or two here. But if we're saying Drogon is growing, his fire should be hotter, so it's kind of the pattern of the explosions. These unrealistic explosions should be bigger.
There also is again, I don't really care. They can do what they want or even change it. Different dragons might work differently. Like there's the heat, but there's also like the force of the blast.
Yeah.
And like what's coming out of Viserion with Night King has, is it heat? Is it ice? Is it the force of the blast? It seems to be what they're using the dragon's power as. Whether that's realistic, I don't care.
And also, a theory I like to back it all up as an underpinning is Drogon quite clearly feels Dany's emotions. So if Dany is full of rage, maybe his fire's a little hotter. Yeah. He's just like, he's intense as well. He's like, and they made a big deal of him screaming constantly. Like there was this constant like screaming of the dragon constantly throughout the episode, and it was like added to the whole tone of everything.
It was another kind of thing. If I was going to nitpick, I would say like a lot of times in movies when people are running around with the pistol and through like 13 minutes of action, they fire 180 shots and they never reload. Like, does Drogon just have infinite fire breathing? His wings never get tired. He never runs out of breath. Yeah.
He's magical. From Pablo Avastegui, sorry if I said your name wrong. Is John going to pull an Hour of the Wolf 2.0 for the guys? Yeah, I have. We're going to talk more about that in the book to show because it's more of a Song of Ice and Fire thing. But I think that personally, if you're looking for parallels, I think Sansa looks more like a Cregan Stark to me because John is hesitant to be a hardliner, but what he just saw may have changed his mind. We'll see. I do think that something like that's going to happen. I'm not quite sure which character will play which role, but yeah, we'll get into that more on Wednesday. Karencita for 2K watchers, hit the like button. Yes, please hit the like button. And yeah, thank you for celebrating our getting of 2K. That's a new high for us. A couple things about cinematography mixed into some of these scenes. Clegane Bowl, we talked about that. I know your thoughts, I think, are a little different than mine on this, but like this was just a revenge arc. You know, it was never meant to be nuanced or to have a lot of depth to it. So I think they played to the moment as best as they could by making this battle as scenic as possible. Because you can't really have a lot of nuance to two huge dudes just wailing on each other. And they did have a character moment. It was just before the fight. It was Arya and Sandor's character moment, which was really good. I thought that was a really strong moment. Her saying, look, don't be like me. Don't make your whole life about revenge. Don't do that. You know, and he got to say, look at me, which was a nod to his book line that he got stolen.
His conversation with Arya is why at the end of the episode I felt so strongly like she's just leaving. She's just getting out. And you know, obviously that was, people had such different opinions on where Arya was going and whether she was going to kill Daenerys or kill Drogon or anything like that we're not going to get into right here. But that conversation with Sandor did make me feel like she's getting out and she was going to get out. And I guess it's like one of those, like, it makes me think of one of those old, you know, cop movies, you know, like, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
It's a Godfather 3 line. Yeah.
So you can have character moments before the spectacle, but once you get to the fight, it's got to be all spectacle. And so I was okay with them just making it really amazing with the staircase. If Ashay has this shot here we can pull up of the epicness of them being on a staircase with it all collapsing behind with Drogon in the background. And I didn't, you know, as far as expectations, I don't know what else I could have hoped for there.
I want to be clear. I don't mean to be too negative about this.
Yeah.
It was just, I'm trying to think how to say it. It seemed less important or climactic or special. I don't know what I want to use in the context of everything else. I thought it itself would be this climactic moment. I thought we would have these characters arrayed. It's somewhere in King's Landing, confronting Cersei, the mountain there, standing to defend her against Arya and Grey Worm and the Hound, and it's this melee between them, and in the last minute, you know, the Hound gets chopped down, Arya slashes his throat, someone grabs Cersei and like, whoa! But instead it was like this side battle, you know what I mean? It's like everything else that was happening was so much bigger that this almost didn't matter. Now, it did... maybe that is
that's part of what they're
poetically important.
Yeah,
that it doesn't matter. That it's just revenge. Sandor shouldn't be messing around with this. That Gregor's going to die anyway. That this is why Arya needs to get out of there. That it doesn't matter.
That's what I liked about it. That there was not a positive message at the end of his revenge story.
Yeah.
It's like his revenge story did end in his death, and there wasn't like he got revenge. You know that because that's not good. That's not a good thing to devote your life to.
It's not like he stopped the mountain and now the mountain won't do any more damage. He wasn't going to do any more damage anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And it also did, I guess, add to the epicness of the battle because in the background, everything collapsing around them, the fire.
And their fall was like, you get to see this like long plunge and you get to see the scenery as they're falling. Yeah, like they put a lot of backdrop behind it.
I can't help but also want to bring up Arya and her revenge plot. I mean, we saw her revenge plot. She killed Walder Frey. Like, she got a lot of her revenge, you know. She did.
Yeah.
And she came back from it and is I don't know how I feel about all of that. I'm most mixed up, and I really can't say until next episode, until we see where Arya ends, where I think she's gonna end up. But that scene with Sandor made it feel like there was a path back to humanity for her, where she was, you know, gonna leave and maybe not just go off and be on her own and maybe go see her family again, or maybe she felt like she was too dedicated to this revenge, but now
maybe that's part of the path to humanity is to stop Dany.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's
it's
an argument for that.
It's not like revenge. It's not like she is necessarily trying to get revenge on Dany or on Drogon. Either way, it's just that she could just be like, these people, these beings cannot exist now.
Yeah,
they are dangerous. I don't know.
So moving to, you know, it's funny that we talked about the Euron and Jaime fight and how it just seemed, and I agree, it was kind of meh, didn't really do much for me. But just a point of perspective here, that moment, that scene meant a lot to people from Denmark. That is being called behind the scenes the Dane Bowl, because those are both Danish actors.
Oh.
And Euron said, after 15 years of being colleagues, I get 2 days to kick his ass. And so that was kind of cool. Like I said, you know, I don't know what kind they could have done with Euron to make his death interesting.
I really wanted to see him die via drowning.
Burning or drowning would have been cool.
He would have been burned and then drowning, and just like instead of 3 minutes for him and Jaime to fight, you get the 3 seconds or whatever where you see him dead in the water, which is
sinking down, like we saw Jaime sink down in the water.
Yeah, very suitable for him. And then Jaime still gets to King's Landing, goes up to Cersei, and they die in the rubble. It's the exact same set of events. Like there's no difference.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I agree.
it's just a waste of time to me. But at least, like you said, Dane.
The Dane Bowl.
The Dane Bowl.
Gives us a pun. So Game Bowl and the Dane Bowl. So I do have more thoughts on Jaime. We'll talk about in the book to show on Wednesday. So let's talk about Jaime and Cersei. That, of course, is a natural segue from Jaime moving away from the battle. It always made sense they would die together. That was a surprise to nobody. Maybe some of the details and some of how we got there. And it was always a major hiccup for him to kill her because of the pregnancy.
I'm so sorry, but I got to back up for a second because there's a point I wanted to make. I've been predicting that we might see Arya fulfill her promise to Gregor, to Sandor, of shoving a blade through his eye out the back of his head.
Yeah.
Of course, we didn't see that, but we saw Sandor shove a blade through Gregor's eye. Through the back of his
he
head,
got to do it. That's a good point. Yeah. Good point.
Sorry to cut you off there, but.
So Jaime and Cersei. I think that maybe Cersei's final moments were a little muted, but I don't have any complaints there. It met my expectations. There's certainly things they could have done differently, but I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about it. I think it was fine. It was kind of an ending to the arc that I sort of expected, and their acting was really strong. And like someone said earlier, it was poetic. What do you think?
I overall liked it, although, like a lot of things, I understand and expect a lot of people to not like it. I think some people wanted to see her die, wanted more specifically to see Dany kill her or Arya kill her, not just she got crushed and rubble.
Dany did kill her.
Right, but we didn't see Dany kill her.
No,
Dany
Dany
didn't see her kill her.
Dany will know that next episode that she did that.
Maybe they'll dig her out of the rubble. Dany gets credit for it, but I still think it would have been a better payoff for a lot of people if she just charged her dragon right to that balcony of the Red Keep, fire blowing the whole way, and Cersei got singed to a crisp.
Yeah,
I think that would have been more satifying to some people. I didn't necessarily want or expect or care about that, but I guarantee you 1 million people did.
Oh yeah, a lot of people wanted her to be burned to a crisp or murdered savagely. But
what I did appreciate
was usually not how they do that.
What I wanted more out of that was for Dany to make the decision to go straight for the Red Keep,
right,
and to target. This would not give Cersei the chance to even escape or anything like that, because she was just giving her more of a chance to get away.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It almost seemed like Dany was avoiding killing Cersei. Maybe even she wanted Cersei to see, I guess. I don't know. But there were some things about it I did like. I liked the idea of her being buried in King's Landing. I like the idea of her, that moment. I guess it was a little before the moment they actually die, but when she's standing on that map of Westeros. By the way, Shea, do you have this image?
Which one?
The one where she's standing on the map of Westeros and that crack opens across the floor and it kind of splits it north and south.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah, it was a visually neat moment to see things falling apart, but also kind of symbolic that Westeros is being split apart underneath her feet.
Yeah.
And I even wondered if it was relevant where that crack was. The fact that it was dividing it between north and south. Right, then the line goes right by King's Landing, which if it goes straight across, also goes right by, it was a little hard to see exactly, but it seems like it would go right past Casterly Rock.
It definitely, it definitely goes right across.
Yeah.
That's cool. Another fun, just random moment I loved as far as visuals that I just have to highlight, which doesn't belong in any particular discussion. It's just a fun moment. There's a moment at around 38 minutes in that I dubbed Flying Fire Guy, which he's specifically given a little bit of screen time in the behind the episode stuff, the game revealed.
Good job, Aziz.
I remembered again. Yeah. So here's the shot. You can see this one poor dude who is still standing on the battlements after the gate was blown open, and Dany makes a second pass later. And this one dude gets torched. You can see him falling down in flames. And yeah, ouch. Poor dude. And then afterwards, they were congratulating the actor because he did a good job. Good job, dude. You survived your stunt there. All right. Yeah, so it looks like we're facing a sort of Queen of the Ashes situation here. There's so much destruction and so much to recover from. And, I want to point out that the difference between acting smart and acting ethically. We got into this a little bit earlier, but I want to focus on a little more. And how Jon is portrayed as one of the few ethical people in these scenes, and how everybody else is either not or either kind of neutral or whatever. But on terms of behaving intelligently and logically making good decisions, and I'm not referring to bad writing here. I just think that it's a theme that people are just being a slave to their emotions, a slave to their desires, or just making lots of mistakes. Like Tyrion. So many mistakes with regards to trusting certain people and giving away information that he shouldn't give away in terms of the battle, and misweighing things, and probably not handling Daenerys very well, like as we talked about, not like talking to her more and like helping her out with her state of mind. Like they just didn't do that. And Varys, well, we've been through that already. He's been a hypocrite about a lot of things, even though he was ultimately quote unquote right. Jaime rushing off to die with his sister. I mean, that's falling back on the worst habit he's ever had, you know. Sandor, ditto, right? Arya was on that track too until she was talked out of it, and then she seemed to have a real transformation there at the end, which is really interesting. But still, most of the episode, she was right with everybody else, just out for blood. Jon, not out for blood, but we talked about how naive and frustrating he was. I don't need to rehash that. The person, you know, the smartest people are the ones who weren't there, who stayed away. Like Brienne didn't come follow Jaime.
Levels.
We wondered if that would happen. Good for her, she didn't. You know, I really thought she might, but I'm glad she didn't. Sansa has been like right about everything. You know, like has nailed it. She was right to not. She was like, look, I don't know if we can trust Dany. Turned out to be right. Maybe she had a role in that, in making that situation worse.
Yeah, some people would argue that because she let it slip, that it caused more pressure to Dany and is what led Dany to snap. Yada yada. It's really hard to assign the blame at any point. You just got to say that it happened. A lot of people led to this cascade effect. Which,
like if
cascade.
Tyrion had gone to Dany before he went to Varys,
then it might have been different.
Would she have felt more? Less betrayed, had more time to think of things out, consider how to go forward, whatever.
And if they had talked about how you know who Jon had already told, and maybe there's a different argument for convincing Jon not to. Someone else could talk to Jon and be like, "Look, here's another reason why you shouldn't tell anybody. Let me convince you that Sansa will tell someone." Which Dany was right about that, you know. And
that maybe is like a question, an important point that people in the fandom care about is. Was this inevitable? Are they trying to tell us that she was going to go crazy no matter what because she's Targaryen, which I and a lot of people think is kind of weak? Or was she really driven to this by specific events that were occurrences that were happening to her, pushing her to
it's
this?
Kind of like the idea of self-fulfilling prophecy and the idea of
destiny versus decision.
Destiny versus decision. If all these people around you are talking about and have these ideas of some Targaryens go mad and this is a possibility, and Varys is talking about flipping the coin, well, then you're gonna be more inclined to do that. It's just the case, and just like you're more likely to feel like you're a prophetic, you know, hero if there's actually prophecies about you.
Yeah, it's wild. Like we can't conceive of what that would do to somebody.
So,
how do you keep all that together?
If your life you're told you might go crazy. Some of your family members are crazy, and then when you feel like a little bit of the bloodlust and you're on your dragon, you're like, oh, this is it now. I'm in it, and she just goes all in. Potentially, I don't have to love it, but
there's another thing that I don't know frustrates me a little bit, because even if somehow you're trying to have some hope that she didn't really go insane, this is a moment where she lost it. Really should be a good leader after this. History won't care as much as long as everything. One, I still feel like what she did is just unforgivable. Whether or not you want to call it insane, it was an insane thing to happen, Yeah,
an insane act, not necessarily an insane person.
Right. Yeah. And it also, even if she is definitively not insane after this, still not so sure we should let her be in charge with these dragons. But also, it makes sense to me that someone would go insane after this. Imagine having that death on your soul,
Realizing what you had done.
It might be unrealistic for her to not go insane.
I think that's a great point, that, the weight of knowing how many people you killed, and she's going to be faced with it. Like we have to be seeing her like walking the streets and seeing just the kind of things Arya saw, and that's got to affect you emotionally. And even if she puts up a veneer for a minute, I feel like she's going to crack again.
Exactly. Like the one way to deal with that might be to block it out, but it's still in there your whole life when you still have a dragon,
She's got to live with what she's done. Assuming she does live, then So I wonder about that. I was pretty adamant, I think, last time that I don't think Jon would kill Dany. I backed off on that somewhat. I'm not adamant about that anymore.
Yeah, I still don't think so.
I don't think he will either. I think someone else would, but he might be pushed into it by other people. He might be pushed into it by his own guilt.
I have to say, we talked about how many people there even were that were possible to kill Dany.
Yeah.
And the numbers were so few. Like
Yeah.
it's really
yeah.
out of the actual feasible people, it really comes down to,
It's like Arya
Jon
and Jon.
Arya are the most possible. And there's technically some other people you can mention
Yeah.
that are named characters, but it's so few. But one person I want to mention that I don't think is likely, but I just don't think is getting enough mention is Daenerys herself. Like we have this idea of Maegor the Cruel in the past, like potentially having killed himself on the Iron Throne, and just the idea of like Daenerys not being able to live with what she's done is very meaningful to me. I don't think that she's going to do that, and I think lots of people would be so upset. It would have its own issues with the message, but in terms of the third option, I think Daenerys is the third most
Probably
likely.
better than Jon killing her, though, right?
Do you think Tyrion could be an
Maybe.
option?
In terms of reactions.
I think Tyrion and Davos are the only two other options.
No, Sansa-
Well,
no, I mean, if they overthrow her and have her
I think
executed-
Arya and Jon are the most likely.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's a bunch of other people,
Besides
I
her-
guess, maybe, than herself, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of torn on Jon because part of me feels like he won't do it out of honor, out of love for her, whatever it is about him. He doesn't want to be Kingslayer. And also because he literally specifically reinforced her vows to her.
Yeah.
I love you. You will always be my queen. But that also maybe makes it all the more tragic for him to actually do it. All the more unexpected or important for him to, or whatever.
So this is really neat because I think they missed a small opportunity to use one particular line that I thought is really poignant and super applies to this episode. I believe it comes from season 4. And it's Jorah saying there's a beast inside every man and it comes to life when you put a sword in his hand. I'm paraphrasing that quote slightly. But holy crap, that's perfect for this episode. And it's all because it not only applies to these soldiers looting and pillaging, but to Dany herself, potentially. And but Dany's own words from long ago also really ring powerful here. I will take what is mine with fire and blood. We never maybe took that seriously enough. It was a slogan that was like, yeah, she's fierce, she's badass, but we never really thought of how it could be applied to in the wrong ways. And yeah, that's tough. Let's see. So do you have any more thoughts on that?
I do have one
quick
thought. I forgot to bring this up when we were talking about Jaime and Cersei.
Yeah.
Jaime told Bronn, remember Jaime and Bronn talked about how they wanted to die.
Oh yeah.
In your arms is the woman he loves.
It's true. He did get that. He did have that come to fruition. Another thing that's interesting to me about Jon is something that Dany said a while back, that like he's a hero and heroes have this, dumb heroes have this, pattern of getting themselves killed, doing dumb, brave things or whatever. And Jon has done enough dumb things to get killed several times over and then come back once.
And has gotten killed, yeah.
and actually has gotten killed. But that's a thing that comes up. Like he's a savior character in a lot of ways, but he's also had to be saved a lot of times. He's been saved by Corrin, by his own brothers when he deserted, by Dany,
by one of Craster's wives.
He's been saved. Yeah, stabbed the Carl from behind. Yeah, just tons of times he's been saved at the last minute. Ghost, yeah. So, that's a part of who he is, that he gets into trouble with his passion is not thinking and just trying to act and be good, and you want to encourage people being good, but you don't want to encourage people not thinking.
You want to think ahead. You want to be good and think ahead.
And not be naive. And Jon is just very naive about certain things. Like, we've beaten this horse to death, but the fact that he just wouldn't listen to, no, Sansa will tell. He's like, no, she won't. And his just repeated thinking that I don't want it is somehow enough. Like, oh, I'm just going to tell them I don't want it. Like, come on, that's not enough. Everyone knows that's not enough. Everyone's telling you that's not enough. Dany tells you that's not enough. Sansa tells you that's not enough. Varys tells you that it's not enough.
I wonder how
these are all people smarter than him about this, and he doesn't listen to any of them.
I wonder how the conversation would go if they pushed that farther. You know what I mean? Like, we feel like we know the rebuttal to that, but then I wonder what's Jon's rebuttal to that. If people try to explain to him, look, you have this honor, you think it won't, but A, are you so sure for everyone else? B, let's say you're wrong. Let's weigh the risk that's being taken if you're right. Like, let's say you're 99% sure you're right. And we agree to you. What does that other 1% do? Let's think about it for a second.
I'll note that a lot of people in our chat have over the past weeks have brought up the idea that if Jon feels this so strongly, why doesn't he join the Night's Watch again, or become a maester, or do something, that like Maester Aemon himself did, just to try to dissuade people from putting him on the throne, put another barrier up.
Exactly, because I think that is part of what the conversation would be. Jon, I think, would realize if they talked it out, that sure you don't want it, sure you won't have ambition, sure they'll respect she's a queen, she has a dragon, but also do you not realize it will cause dissent? It will cause frustration. Dany will be paranoid. You've already seen it happening. Varys, remember that time? Like, they could go, so how else can we address this, John? What's another thing we can do? Can you see our concerns? I guess I can see your concerns. What could I do? Well, you could go to the wall. Oh, I could go. Like, but we never get deep. We never get into that. And I don't know how much of that is just John is naive. I think it's, I'm going to say, bad writing. I feel like they should give us some dialogue. Over and over again, I think keep thinking of conversations that they should have showed us.
We'll see if they get into any of that in this last episode. It should come to a head in some ways.
I'm curious. John and Aemon never had a conversation in the show about why Aemon joined, the Citadel and then the Night's Watch. They did have that
exactly a conversation. Why he told him.
He told him,
but he didn't really
I don't think he gave all the details. He said I'm the son of Maekar.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if John had that experience in his head in the show of having seen a Targaryen who had to go through that.
And by the way, wouldn't it have been neat if we get a moment in the same way we kind of want Dany as she's descending into madness, ostensibly reflecting on things that have been said to her. Wouldn't it be neat to have John hear things that were said to him over time?
Definitely.
Some of those same quotes that he actually heard would have been good ones to hear again, to be reminded of.
So another maybe not surprising but alarming characterization was even Grey Worm giving into bloodlust and his deep need for revenge. Behind the scenes, Jacob Anderson refers to himself as a traumatized robot. And one of the other behind-the-scenes people calls him an angel of death, which is to show that he is somewhat emotionless, or rather his emotion is all geared very narrow at this point, and he's all about, trauma and killing. And that really sold the surrender moment for me, because it just did not seem like him, especially not him or John, would attack, especially not from behind. Like, Grey Worm threw a spear into that guy's back. That was like, whoa. And that was legitimately surprising, and I did not see that coming. I did not think they would attack unarmed guys who would surrender like that. Dany burning them from above, I thought that might happen. I saw that coming. But them actually attacking, I didn't see that coming, and it was very powerful.
I have to say, originally, as I went through a lot of emotions as I saw that, and like Grey Worm throws his spear and like starts killing, and what I read into it at that moment is like, Drogon is burning the city. People are going to die via burning, and Grey Worm's like, if I'm going to go out and I'm going out in the heat of battle. A lot of these men who are soldiers, it's better for us to go out right here fighting, and I'm also going to get out all my anger rather than us just purely burning to death. And I think I was reading too much into it in retrospect, but in that moment, I felt like there was more layers to it as well, I guess.
Right on. Okay, let's take a final set of questions, and then we'll dance our way out of this. From William Coupland, speaking of music, here's an alternative soundtrack for this last episode. He suggests Susie and the Banshees, Cities in Dust, Crazy World of Arthur Brown, Fire, Metallica, For Whom the Bell Tolls, nice, Slayer, Evil Has No Boundaries, or Angel of Death. Yeah, Angel of Death, given what we just said about Grey Worm, fits really nicely. Megadeth, Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good. There's several other Megadeth songs that would fit there, I think. And Mastodon, The Wolf Is Loose. Yep, also several other Mastodon songs that would fit there. Yeah. Yes, good call. I encourage all of you to insert songs from your personal favorites into the chat that you think would be good soundtrack songs for this episode. Speaking of music, Sylvia Sabrek says, notice the credits ending with the Night King theme. Honestly, I thought it ended with Reigns of Castamere, which I thought was a little odd but interesting. But maybe I misheard.
I thought I read somewhere that it was that there were some new songs that were mashed up themes of prior songs.
Maybe that was what she heard one part and I heard the other part. That would make sense.
I guess we'll have to have more information on Wednesday. We'll make a note to look at the music stuff.
Definitely.
By the way, another song with as Drogon's burning the ships. Dun, dun, dun,
Smoke on the water.
Yeah.
Very good call. Very good call. And yeah. So, a question from Ahmed Ali. Sansa just got what she wanted against Dany. Yeah, that's what Dany said. She said she knew that. She figured it out. She knew that Sansa knew that telling the secret to Tyrion would have the result it had. And she says she killed Varys as much as anyone by spilling that secret, which is You know,
Yeah,
that I
loose
didn't like
logic.
that. I didn't like that logic because she had just blamed John for breaking the secret, and that's who told.
The problem is,
You know,
like
you
many
can
of
blame-
these
you
things,
can blame
you
either
can't
of
just
them.
blame one person.
right?
Yeah.
Like we said a minute ago, cascade effect. Yeah. So, little angry Irishman says D&D too concerned with twists, trying for a surprise ruler. I mean, I have brought up the possibility of Bran being the twist ruler at the end, and other people have too. I guess there's other possible twist rulers for sure. Just name one. I don't know, Grey Worm. You know, that would be quite a twist. I don't know
Yeah.
how the hell they could pull that off. but
Davos.
Davos,
Yeah.
yeah. He's worth.
He's more likely, I
seaworthy.
think, than a lot of the others, even though I don't think that's likely.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So I think yes. I think they might want to go for twist. However, if let's say Bran ends up king, that would be the thing that surprised them potentially. Not
Rather than Danny
burning
turning, it would be
King's
Bran.
Landing,
Or
maybe.
if,
Which is
yeah.
an argument against Bran being king. That wouldn't both those things be really shocking to hear
Yeah.
if George told them. So yeah, I don't know if either of those can be eliminated. So and one of them has already happened, and so. But still, I think it's very possible. But if you want to hear my reasoning for that, it was from our predictions episode last week, and I believe I may have mentioned it before that as well. But that's where
you
I
can
really
also
went to it.
look up Great Council ASOIF and just find stuff people talking about great councils in the past, which is what
Yes.
Aziz's idea was rooted in.
Yes.
For context.
From Vampirus 99 or Vampiris 99, we look with the look Grey Worm was giving John and the bit about the Unsullied learning the common tongue. I'm thinking Danny and Grey Worm had that plan already in place. They may have. That's interesting. Yeah, I was wondering about that look that passed between them there.
I think the bit about the common tongue is very notable. I think that helps clinch that Grey Worm understood more of what conversations were happening in front of him than people thought.
Maybe. Although it's maybe implied that they had learned the common tongue. They
Yeah.
didn't know it right away.
Well, I still think,
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
they learned it, but that Grey Worm there, for example, I'm trying to, what the conversation is where Tyrion's talking about, like, what to do with Jon, you know?
Okay.
That Grey Worm would have heard more of that. I still think that they should know that Grey Worm knows more of it.
Well, they know Grey Worm knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've talked to
Yeah.
him a bunch of times, but I think the rest of the Unsullied
Yeah.
I'm not sure about.
I did
Yeah.
also wonder the look that Danny gave Grey Worm and the I'm going to say quickness that Grey Worm went back to attacking once Danny started attacking the city after the bells even. Maybe that it wasn't necessarily planned, but they were still on the same page. They still knew Dracarys was ringing in their Missandei's voice saying Dracarys was ringing in their ears the same.
From Rebecca Bellick, related question from Rebea.
Easy for you to say.
Apparently not. Do you think that the full-on attack by Grey Worm and Danny was pre-planned? At the start of the episode, Danny told Grey Worm, "You'll know when it's time." So yeah, I mean that is possible.
Yeah, I think that you know when it's time was referring to her busting through from behind.
Yeah, I think you're right. That
but it
makes more
still
sense.
doesn't mean they couldn't have at least been on the same page about what was going to end up happening. here.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's more likely that that's the time, like when she blows the gate. Yeah, because that is real clear. Yep, that's the time, all right, when the gate is exploded. From Anthony Vasquez, I personally think that what Danny did was necessary. Drogon is equivalent to a nuclear deterrent. She can now prevent future attacks, battles, and war. She sent the realm a message. Right or wrong? Well, couldn't she have done that without burning so many kids? Like, I think she could have
Yes.
just done... She could have shown the power of this battle station, like the
Yeah.
Death Star, without using it against a civilian target. You can blow up an empty planet and be like, look, I could turn this against a real planet. Although...
I mean, she can just do the walls of King's Landing.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, I want to counter
Yeah.
my argument here, though. But there's a difference between showing that you can do it and actually proving that you're willing to do it.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts here. One is I've had the same thought about World War II. We could have just set a nuclear bomb off on some mountainside and just
Look, we could drop that on
look,
you.
Japan at noon on this date. Look at this spot. Watch what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, now do you surrender? Like if we really thought we needed to do it, we could have demonstrated first. We could have picked a city with a smaller population. So many things. Danny could have. And in fact, I'm going to say what I thought. Like all the different things along the way. Remember I said that they were trying to make sure it was indefensible. Like if she had started this before the bells ring, like she waited and waited, they didn't ring. Okay, that's it. I'm going. And then after that, the bells ring and she keeps going. Even that is maybe more defensible, but she did it before, or I mean, she did it after the bells ring, not before. Then also I thought what was happening is she was just zooming toward the Red Keep. She's going to take out Cersei, and she's going to put an exclamation mark on it and burn everything in the path, innocent or otherwise. You know, that's what I kind of thought. And I was hoping maybe she was just going to burn a line of troops on the path there, but it seems like she's getting innocent too. I'm like, well, I guess she's an incidental prove she's willing to do it. She's gonna get Cersei. But then it cuts and she's just zigzagging back and forth, and I'm like, oh my god, like
she's making up for Rickon.
Keeps zigzagging back.
This is how it's done, little boy.
Yeah. So the idea that it's necessary, like there may be some piece of this that was quote unquote necessary, but I don't think the entirety of it was.
And this gets back to our original point about analytics versus anger. If she had been a little more analytical about where the precise, targeted horror to maximum effect to show what she's capable of would be a lot better than just going off and just slaughtering people and using that for the same cause. She could have engineered it.
Like think
more,
in fact, think about this. Let's say somehow this was necessary to prevent future attacks, battles, and wars. Let's say that this deterrent thing, right? What do you think would happen in a future attack? How many people would die? How many of them would be soldiers that signed up for the war versus innocent children? It had nothing to do. Right? It's not justified. I just can't see how a future war that she deters is worse than this.
Well, here's an alternate take. Indeed, Lady Marmalade says violence begets violence. Guns and bombs don't bring peace. No one else but Dany can be blamed for her burning 1 million people. Well, I don't think she actually burned all of them, but she did.
Yeah,
it's a huge amounts of casualties. We don't know, but it's some huge amount. Yeah, some really huge amount. But I doubt it's even half. Only half.
Only 500,000.
But I think that's in this setting, I would like to you wonder how long it would take for them to get out of a cycle of violence. But they do not really understand that concept. I don't know. It's just this world does not get that.
It seems like they should.
Some places
talked
might.
About smashing the wheel.
Yeah, you're right. But I wonder. That might be. I think Lady Marmalade is right in the modern world to a certain extent. It's a little hard to apply this to their thinking, but you can apply parts of it. You can say, well, you got to start somewhere. You got if that process takes a long time, well, get it started. From B1 Mary. The only way this works for me is if Bran warged into Daenerys. The finale is Bran controlling everyone and everything. All those scenes they didn't allow will be shown all completely under Bran's abilities. I'm not sure if that would make more sense, but it is technically possible.
It's all Bran's dream.
There were no. That's why
Bran is Bobby Ewing.
That's why they didn't show Dany, because her eyes had turned white from Bran control, and that is about something we haven't mentioned yet. Is that's a
I can't believe I've never heard that term. Brain control.
Brain control. Brain control. That's funny. Bran controlled a Major Tom, and that we didn't talk about this very much, but that Dany isn't. You don't see her again. Once she has her turning point. Wait, which did you prefer? Breaking or turning?
Breaking point. Yeah.
You don't see her face again. Ever. I mean, we'll see it next episode.
This reminds me, Shea.
No, we won't.
We won't. Let it off.
We saw it in the trailer. We can't mention that.
By the way, Shea, this reminds me. Can you bring up those images? I guess first start with Dany, with Drogon behind her. It's especially like we're talking about how once this trailblazing begins, we don't see her face anymore. It's Drogon is sort of in Dany's shadows, literally and figuratively. He represents her power, however dark it may be.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, cut if you can. Show us the image of Cersei with the mountain behind her in the shadows. It's constantly for the past couple seasons.
He is her shadow.
He's just always there. They're one and the same. Like I think. However fair this is, it seems to me like they're trying to show that they are responsible for the other's actions.
Yeah.
Cersei is when Cersei tells the mountain to kill someone, Cersei killed someone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dany breathes, if Drogon breathes fire on someone, Dany killed him.
I agree with that.
No, Drogon, stop.
And I think that when people say, "Oh, well, Dany passed the sentence but didn't swing the sword," she did with her dragon.
She swung the sword. That's her sword.
That's her sword.
Yes.
Lightbringer.
I completely distisagree with that read of her not actually meting out her own justice.
I don't even think Sandor is particularly complicit in killing Micah. Like he is, but
he was a
that's
tool.
on Joffrey.
He is complicit, but he is just a tool, and that's the thing that Joffrey asked him to do that day. And
he had the ability to stand up and say, "No, I won't do it," and die for it. But that was kind of the only other choice he had. That is a choice, but it's not a very good one.
And it's the type of choice that we would have judged other characters. That Jon would have taken his vows. He has to obey his commander.
Yeah. I guess he could have found he could have found the kid and not revealed he found him. Cheated. But that's that's breaking your honor. I don't know. It's not simple. Put it that way.
Right. It's not good, but it's not straight up murder. It's not like he's straight up evil.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. So from Acre Frey, can I ask what style of dancing Sean does? I'm going to be starting dancing lessons soon, and I'm wondering, is it help me which styles to go for?
I believe that my style would be referred to as lyrical. I've kind of learned that. I started off just doing it on my own, mostly dancing to drum and bass music, and kind of branched out into hip hop and then disco. I took a salsa class. I kind of took a page out of a bunch of books and just have come to learn that I think my style was fundamentally what would be called lyrical, which is fundamentally what you would see most pop artists dancing, Janet Jackson or Justin Timberlake or whatever. So
Okay.
maybe I'm a little quicker sometimes, have a bit more of a breakdance edge to it, but I don't know if that helps answer your question. But I specifically try to have different types and styles in my dancing in the first place.
Right on. All right, let me say some thanks. You'll have a minute or two to try to sneak in one last question. Big thanks to Ashea for running production and the chat and also weighing in more than usual. That's tricky for her to do while doing so much
I would
at once.
like to give a, disclaimer to anyone who is in the chat or in this week right now and sees leaks. I want to say there are multiple fake leaks that that have been going around. So you don't know what you saw. That's all. Just if that makes you feel better and less stressed out about things.
That's a great point. I should have said that earlier. Yeah, we do know for a fact they filmed that they leaked fake leaks.
And,
oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's we can't say for sure. In some leaks that you may see, there may be one point of it that is valid and 2 points that are not real at all. So unfortunately, it will put your mind in being ready for certain things to happen if you see it, but you have a little bit of an out.
I have not seen any kind of leaks. I don't know how lucky I am to have the right people I'm following or whatever. The closest thing I saw turned out to just be fake. The actor that plays Night King supposedly tweeted something like, you know, how did the Night King turn them into zombies? He touched them. He touched Arya. You know, but then within 24 hours, it was revealed, oh, that's not really the actor. That someone just made an account using the actor's name. And
really?
I felt like I had been spoiled, but it turned out that was just totally.
I remember
anyway.
that tweet. I thought he was just like adding to the discussion.
It wasn't even him.
Wow, that's funny. What a troll! Trolls get really sophisticated these days. I think we told some of y'all what happened in one of our streams last year. Is that someone came into the stream and you can ban them after they say something, but this person came in with their name. Their name was Viserion Dies.
Yeah.
So you ban them, but it says Viserion Dies has been banned.
Yeah,
you know,
that was really rough last season.
I got pretty upset with that.
Yeah,
that was a spoiler. Because that not only spoiled me. Spoiled it. I think you may have already been spoiled on that. But it spoiled a bunch of people in the chat.
And there was nothing we could do about it. So now we just told anyone listening how to.
We just gave him a road
how to work the system to
screw us
spoil
over.
us.
I hopefully trolls don't listen.
They only have one more episode to do it.
I assume most trolls wouldn't listen to be this deep into our episode 2 hours in. They're like, I'm gonna find. They're gonna slip up. Let me just keep listening. I'll find a way to get them. So let's why don't we pull up the old get the song ready, and I'll give a few more thanks while y'all are getting that ready. Thanks to Michael Klarfeld for the video intro, our beautiful maps, and thanks to Joey Townsend, Jesse Coel for our intro outro music. Thank you to so many of our wonderful patrons. I'm gonna have to. I guess we can try to sneak in the beard guard real quick here while this gets set up. I can read it while you guys go set up. I'll just jump in.
All right.
Once you're started.
Jay, is it worth pulling the music up on a computer?
Lord Commander George the Golden, Sir Joshua Oakhart the White Oak, Lady Rita of the Coppermane the Unburnt, Dance the Fervor, Sir Jeff Warden of the AC, Wielder of Triad, the multifaceted beard of Platinum, Red and Frosty, Red and Brown, Stay Frosty. Yeah, I think my way's funnier though. Sir Tim Corgyle, Mad Boy of the Western Desert, Queen Helena von Lonstein, partying like it's 1999 since 1980-something. A kingdom for a drink. I think a kingdom was worth several drinks, so that's a great deal.
Are you also getting up or just
I am going to get up. I just wanted to read this first.
I should maybe play this at the same time.
Sure. Well, I'm done now. All right, folks. I'm getting on camera with my. I'm gonna hopefully remind you all of Elaine a little bit with some little kicks, and I'm the comic relief. I'm on pirate pajama pants too.
He's stretching.
I was born ready.
He's clearly stretching right now.
My middle name is Sam. Oops, I tripped over there. a little bump up.
I cannot keep the webcam straight because I'm just laughing.
You still in my head?
I was popping your eyes out.
Oh.
What is this? We have the Clegane Bowl, the Dane Bowl, and
The dance bowl.
the Beard Bowl.
Dance.
This is the hard part of the dance.
Yeah.
Do something modern.
Just the old one-legged.
Is this Tyrion's theme song? Oh, it got blurry.
Oh, dancer pose.
Okay.
You gotta hold it till the end of this. It's gonna kick in a second.
You guys gonna dance to the whole song?
Is that we're gonna listen to the whole song?
I don't know. I can't see the chat right now, so
Everyone's already
watch.
quit.
I'm gonna go to the chat, and there's like one person watching right now. 2,000 people cleared out. Oh look, the cat.
We got a dancing cat? Alright, I'll dance with Xerxes.
That's fair, I don't get a cat.
I'm gonna stop the
I'm not even
music.
gonna dance if I don't get a cat.
Also, I'm worried we're gonna play the whole song and get copyright infringement or something like that.
Fair use, fair use.
Oh, she'll let you go in first.
Okay.
Okay, goodbye everybody. Thank you very much for for entertaining us during our entertainment. And Valar redances? Exactly. Valar reread us. Valar rewatch us. Adios.